Australians produce more rubbish per person than any other nation in the world, with the one exception being the United States. Each Australian household throws away over 1.3 tonnes of rubbish each year. Now, when this ends up in our garbage bins and it heads off to landfill and it starts decomposing, it produces a gas called methane, which is far more harmful than carbon dioxide, which we know is a leading contributor to climate change. The good news is that Australians are doing really well with their recycling. Over 62% of our packaging waste is actually recycled last year, and that was an increase on 5.5% for the year before. So we're getting better. However, about 8 to 10% of what does end up getting picked up in our recycling has to go to landfill because it contaminates the load. So there's still some areas that we need to work on. Some of the more tricky ones are things like the food containers. Something like that would contaminate the load because it's still got the food waste left in there. So we need to scrape that out. Don't need to wash it and make it too perfect, but you at least need to make sure most of the food's gone. Same with drink bottles. What have we got here? Make sure all the liquid is out of your glass and your plastic bottles. Aerosol cans. If you take off the plastic nozzle, that is best practice, and make sure they're empty as well, so they can be recycled these days. Another one which we can still improve on is steel cans. A lot of people aren't actually recycling these, so if you just give them a bit of a rinse, see, it doesn't need to be quite perfect, but give it a bit of a rinse, and that's an easy way to recycle as well.
Don't put your recyclables in a plastic bag because this can't be recycled. If you want to recycle the plastic bags, best to take a bunch of them down to your local supermarket, and that's where they can be recycled. So when you're at the supermarket, when you're looking at products, think about which ones are going to be able to be recycled easily. I guess just try and recycle as much as possible.
So what exactly happens to our recycling once it's been picked up at curbside? Shall we go take a look?
What we've got here is the products just come in on the truck. We've emptied it out. What the loader driver does when the loads come in is they turn the load over and they just move it around and break it up a little bit, so when it goes through the MRFing process, we're able to make sure that the material that's meant to float over the bounce conveyors like the paper actually does that, rather than it all being compacted together and not working through the MRF properly. Okay, Lara, it's the first part of the process here. It's a manual sorting process. As the product has come out of the trucks, these guys here are actually taking out the material that is contaminated. Obviously the stuff that's already in the bag, we like the material outside of the bags so that it doesn't end up going to landfill here. We take the cardboard out as well because the cardboard goes directly over into our cardboard shed, and the rest of the process goes through to sort and separate the different materials from here. What happens next is we obviously have to get the paper out of the process. We bring that up over bounce conveyors because it takes a two-dimensional process, allowing the paper to float to the top. Things like the three-dimensional bottles, PET, plastics and the like, they'll fall through the trommel. We use magnets to attract steel and technology like eddy currents to repel things like the aluminium. Here behind us we have a plastic auto sort facility, and what that's doing is taking the plastics and actually optically working out whether it's PET, HDPE, and just sort separating the different forms of plastic.
So we've heard what happens inside the materials recovery facility, and this is what happens outside when it's all compacted and ready to begin the next stage of its journey to become a new product. So by recycling and doing it right, we're helping to save natural resources, water and energy, and we're helping keep waste out of landfill. And we're helping to address climate change.